Number 10. Frederick the Great. Frederick II of Prussia wasn't just any king. He was a military genius who transformed Prussia into a European powerhouse in the 18th century. History books love to talk about his brilliant military campaigns and his flute playing, but they seem to get amnesia when it comes to his personal life. Frederick was forced into a political marriage with Elizabeth Christine of Brunswick-Bevern, but the two never had children, and Frederick reportedly never spent a night with her after their wedding day. Not suspicious at all, right? Instead, Frederick surrounded himself with handsome young men and had a particularly close friendship with Hans Hermann von Katte. When Frederick's father discovered their plan to flee Prussia together, he had Katte executed, right in front of Frederick. Frederick later built Sans Souci Palace, where he lived with his all-male entourage, and specifically requested to be buried next to his friends, rather than his wife. I mean, nothing says just bros like wanting to spend eternity lying next to your male companions instead of your wife. Number 9. Christina of Sweden. Queen Christina wasn't subtle about breaking gender norms in the 17th century. She refused to marry, insisted on being called king instead of queen, and often dressed in men's clothing. Christina abdicated her throne in 1654, converted to Catholicism, and moved to Rome, where she developed an intense relationship with Cardinal Azzolino. But it was her relationships with women, particularly her lady-in-waiting Ebba Spar, that raised eyebrows. Christina wrote passionate letters to Ebba, calling her beautiful and expressing how she burned with love for her. When you're writing that you're on fire for your lady-in-waiting, it's probably more than just court etiquette. Number 8. James I of England. James I might be famous for commissioning the Bible translation that bears his name, but what Sunday school conveniently forgets to mention is his string of male favorites. James had several male companions that he showered with titles, wealth, and very public affection. His relationship with George Villiers, Duke of Buckingham, was so intense that James referred to him as his wife and sweet child and wife. In letters, James wrote that he loved Villiers more than anyone else, and at court he would openly kiss and embrace him. When courtiers complained about this behavior, James responded with a speech defending his right to love whom he chose. The king literally said he loved Villiers more than anyone else, but historians still tried calling them just good friends for centuries. Number 7. Edward II of England. Talk about relationship drama. Edward II's affection for his favorite, Piers Gaveston, was so obvious and intense that it caused a political crisis in medieval England. Edward gave Gaveston the royal treasures, allowed him to sit at his side during his coronation, a place reserved for queens, and even delayed his own wedding to spend more time with him. After Gaveston's execution by jealous nobles, Edward took up with another man, Hugh Despenser. These relationships weren't just political, they were deeply personal, with contemporaries describing Edward's immoderate love and excessive affection. Unfortunately for Edward, his queen Isabella eventually led a rebellion against him, leading to his capture and death, supposedly by hot poker in a place where the sun doesn't shine. Medieval subtlety at its finest. Number 6. Mwanga sect of Buganda. Ruling in what is now Uganda in the late 19th century, Mwanga Tsugu was known to have sexual relationships with men in his court, a practice that wasn't considered unusual in pre-colonial Buganda. When Christian missionaries began converting his pages and condemning these relationships, Mwanga had dozens of them executed, creating the famous Uganda martyrs. While colonial historians painted Mwanga as a brutal tyrant, which, to be fair, the executions were horrific, they conveniently ignored that his resistance was partly about defending indigenous cultural practices around sexuality from European interference. His story shows how European colonialism not only conquered lands but also imposed its sexual morality, erasing existing traditions that didn't fit their worldview. Number 5. Emperor Ai of Han China. This Chinese emperor from the 1st century BCE gave us one of history's most romantic gestures. Emperor Ai was sleeping one afternoon with his male lover Dongshan, whose head rested on the sleeve of the emperor's robe. When Ai needed to get up, rather than wake his beloved, he took a knife and cut off his own sleeve. This gave rise to the Chinese term the passion of the cut sleeve, Tuanxiujuqi, which became a euphemism for homosexual love in China for centuries afterward. Now that's commitment. I won't even let someone use my phone charger. And this guy cut up his royal robes just to avoid disturbing his boyfriend's nap. Number 4. Hatshepsut of Egypt. While ancient Egypt had several female pharaohs, Hatshepsut stands out for her complete adoption of male royal imagery. After claiming the throne around 1478 BCE, she had herself depicted with a pharaoh's beard and male body in official art and used masculine titles. Some scholars argue this was purely political, to establish legitimacy in a male-dominated system, but others suggest it reflected a more personal gender identity. Either way, when Hatshepsut died, her successor Thutmose III tried to erase her from history, defacing her monuments and removing her name from king lists. Talk about extreme historical ghosting. Number 3. Richard the Lionheart. One of England's most celebrated warrior kings spent almost no time in England and almost all his time with men. While Richard's military prowess in the Crusades made him a legend, his personal life raises some obvious questions. Richard married Princess Berengaria of Navarre, but produced no heirs and reportedly rarely saw her. Meanwhile, historical accounts describe his excessive love for Philip II of France, with whom he shared the same bed and ate from the same dish. When confronted by a hermit who accused him of sinful behavior, Richard supposedly confessed to sodomy along with other sins. After his capture in Austria, he wrote numerous affectionate letters, not to his wife, but to his beloved Philip. I'm not saying Richard and Philip were an item, but if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck. Number 2. Queen Anne of Great Britain. Queen Anne, who ruled from 1702 to 1714, had a remarkably close relationship with Sarah Churchill, Duchess of Marlborough. Their thousands of surviving letters reveal intensely emotional language, with Anne writing to "My dear Mrs. Freeman," Sarah's nickname, about how passion made her hot and how she desired nothing more than to live somewhere with Sarah alone. Sarah later wrote that the Queen's heart was capable of a passion more tender than friendship. When Sarah fell from favor, Anne grew equally close to her cousin Abigail Masham, causing a jealous Sarah to spread rumors about the nature of Anne's relationship with Abigail. The political cartoons of the time were not subtle, depicting Anne and Abigail in, let's just say, very compromising positions. But hey, I'm sure they were just really good at managing royal correspondence together. Number 1. Nzinga of Ndongo and Matamba. Perhaps the most badass ruler on our list, Nzinga ruled parts of present-day Angola for decades in the 17th century, successfully fighting against Portuguese colonization. What makes Nzinga particularly remarkable was her fluidity with gender roles. After becoming ruler, Nzinga had herself titled king rather than queen, and created a harem of young men who dressed as women and were her wives. European observers were scandalized, but Nzinga used their confusion to her advantage, strategically breaking and redefining gender norms as a way to consolidate power. She successfully held off Portuguese expansion for years through both military action and clever diplomacy. Nzinga essentially said, "I'll be the king, I'll have the wives, and I'll still outmaneuver every European power trying to take my land."